back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. We are fortunate enough today to have a five-time world champion who also happens to live locally, and that's Ron Sherry, who is an ice boat professional and probably is as good of an ice boat captain as there is. Actually, should I say ice boat captain is probably the wrong term. But first of all, Ron, welcome to the show. I appreciate you sitting down, and I want to talk a little bit about ice boating, but I also know you have a pretty storied sailing career. So this is the time of sailing, and first of all, thanks for sitting down and talking with us.
Glad to be here.
I think the easiest thing to start with is the beginning. It's kind of where we start with most of the other Where did you start sailing, or was it ice boating first or sailing first for you?
It was sailing first, going out with my dad, but ice boating as well. Because I mean, when I was just a real little kid, my dad would sit me on the plank backwards, and I'd tuck my elbow in the cockpit, and he'd take me for a ride on the ice boat. And we used to go out and chase freighters in the Thistle with the whole family, out of Crescent, and went through Crescent junior sailing program. I started racing ice boats when I was 9, at least going around marks and all that kind of stuff. And I started racing at the same time with George Devlin, Thistle 108 out of Crescent at 9 years old. And I got to sail with George Devlin because he wouldn't yell at me, and my dad wanted me to like sailing, and my dad, was enthusiastic. Say about his sailing. So
he was passionate.
That's how I went through the Crescent Junior Sailing Program, and yeah, passionate. That's a good word. And anybody who knows my dad knows he was, and he was very talented. But yeah,
I always like to use the word passionate because it's sort of a large word that sort of takes in a lot of. Sometimes on the sidelines, if I'm coaching, I'm a passionate football coach. It sounds better than saying he's a maniac from our perspective. You went to Clintondale High School. So you're a local boy. You've been to Crescent most of your life, or all your life.
All my life, yep.
And is just a real weird question: is Lake St. Clair a great place for ice boating?
Yeah, it has been a great place for ice boating, and over the years, I mean, when I was younger, I sailed around the St. Clair Light. I've been around the St. Clair Light 3 times on an ice boat, and I sailed down to Crescent twice. But that was back in the old days. Now, as soon as there's any ice on the lake, they send the icebreakers through the channel. And so what happens is the ice gets a chance to move because when it's brand new in small pieces and it forms cracks, and then if you get a west wind, it can blow out and then blow back in, and it tends to all bust up out in the main area of the lake unless we get really, really cold temperatures and get it locked in. But Anchor Bay tends to be, in the north, tends to be a good place. We sail out of the DNR launch at M59 in Brandenburg Park at basically 23 in Jefferson. And we've even made it around to Algonac and sailed there last year, 2 years ago. So, but like last year, I didn't sail on Lake St. Clair at all. But we did sail on Whitmore Lake, Pontiac Lake, White Lake, Walled Lake. We sailed on a bunch of lakes around here, and we have a really good network of email addresses and scouts, and everybody goes out and scouts the ice, and then we all go to the same place where the ice has been scouted, and we know that it's safe, and we get out there and have a ball. And I mean, that's more fun to me than go to Pontiac Lake and race around the islands with 14 or 15 boats. I mean, that's just the most, and then go to the bar afterwards and talk about it, what worked and what didn't. It's just so much fun. I love that more than about anything.
Maybe a little bit about background. You're from Clintondale. You have your own ice boat company now called
Composite Concepts.
So you build ice boats for a living. Is that something you've always done?
I was a sailmaker for 15 years. I worked at Boston Sales, started there when I was 15, then Allman Sales, then North Sales. And then I went to work at Offshore Spars and built the America's Cup mast for Mighty Mary. And then in 95, I started my own company, Composite Concepts, and have been running that ever since. So
I was going to ask you if you're involved in other sports, but that's kind of a dumb question because you're ice boating in the winter and your professional career revolves around sailing. This has been a lifelong dream and a lifelong vocation and avocation.
One of the things we talked about, though, is you said that you do a lot of things in the summertime to prepare for your ski season. Well, a lot of the things I do in the summertime prepares me for ice boating. I work out at the gym, and I play softball, and so that I keep my running going, because it's a Lamaze start in ice boating. You run to start boats, and so I always try to stay in good shape for that. So there's a lot of things I do in the summertime just so I'll be ready for ice boating in the winter.
Did you ice boat race first or sailboat race first?
It's about I started both about the same, but when I was 9, about the same time, really. My dad had a good friend named Chris Froland, and he had a couple of skimmer ice boats, which are these steel pole ice boats with a trampoline in the middle and foot pedal steering. These little guys, and my dad would set the cones out in a small area, and Chris's son Nelson and I used to go around the cones when we were really young, and we'd stay right in that area, and sail there. And like I said, I started racing with George Devlin at that same year. I sailed with George and my brother Kevin the first year, and then the next year, my sister Jane joined in, who was a year younger than me, and so Jane was 9 and I was 10, and we were so light. George Devlin only weighed 120 pounds, and with Jane and I, George made a roller furling system on the whistle so I could roller reef the main while I was droop hiking, and they called us the Fleet Circus, and but we did really good in light air.
Does sailing prepare you for ice boating, or does ice boating prepare you for sailing?
I think a little bit of both. I mean, I think a little both. The feeling, getting the touch for sailing downwind in an ice boat helps you for sailing downwind in a summer boat, and vice versa. I mean, you're always feeling for that slight difference in speed. Whether it's summer sailing or ice boating, although the speed differences are a little less in summer sailing than it is in ice boating, but you're still, searching for that feel that makes the boat happy is going fast, right? So you want to make the boat happy.
Okay, so our viewers can understand. The first ice boat, we had just talked about this before we had sat down to talk. In 1790 in Poughkeepsie was the first recorded ice boat in America. And my point to it is that there's all kinds of classes like there would be in sailing. So maybe kind of go through and explain briefly what classes there are, and then maybe where you competed or where you competed for your world championships.
Well, there's as far as classes of ice boats, the top of the line boat is the E-Skeeter. That's the open class. It just has a bit of a box rule, how tall, how wide. And those are the dome-covered boats with the cowling that comes over like a fighter jet, and they sit in front of the mast, and those things go around and they point so high and go so low and so fast. They're just so efficient. It's incredible. They aren't necessarily the very fastest because they're made to go upwind and downwind. If you're going to make a boat that was just absolutely trying to reach the world speed record, it'd be a little heavier. Other than that, they have like these Skeeters. They have all the big stern steers, which are from the olden days, and they're really beautiful and still really fast. But man, so heavy and so much work to move those things around. They used to travel those around on railroad cars back in the days.
Wow.
Anyway, and compete between Wisconsin and Detroit. They were two of the big hubs for racing the big boats. There's also the Renegade class, which was designed by Elmer Millenbeck in Detroit. It's a 22-foot long, 16-foot wide, 18-foot tall mast boat. Goes about 120 miles an hour, and I've got a couple of those. And then there's the Aero class, which is a 2-seater boat that was designed by Howard Boston, and it's the open cockpit 2-seater, so fiberglass boat, and they still sail those all over the place. There's a night class, which was designed, built in Pewaukee, Wisconsin, still built to this day. It's an enclosed cockpit, foot pedal steering wheel. Really very comfortable boat. I have one of those, my favorite boat to take people for rides in. And the DN class, which is really the biggest class. I mean, it's the international class for sure. I mean, in Europe, it's more popular than even in the United States. It's absolutely amazing the countries that participate and the amount of money that's paid to the sailors from the different countries to actually race ice boats.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. DN stands for Detroit News. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's correct. In 1936, the Detroit News had a design contest to build a home buildable form of winter entertainment for during the days of the Depression when people didn't have any money. So, and we're still using those basic class rules today. Anytime there's a change in specifications that goes out to a boat, and it has to pass by 2/3 to make any changes to the class at all in the specifications. So, and again, it's 12 feet long, 8 foot wide, 16-foot mast, 60 square feet of sail.
I just find it remarkable that
go 94 miles an hour is the fastest I ever got clocked at. So, and they weigh 46 pounds, so they're kind of ridiculous.
I find it remarkable the newspaper would get involved in that, but I understand that the concepts. It's the depression. They were trying to provide a service for the community kind of things, and it's still a class. I mean, that's in international worlds. If if the biggest class is named after a local newspaper, I think that's pretty significant.
It's fantastic. The Detroit News went beyond that. They actually sponsored the building of the first 12 boats, and they were called Blue Streaks. And that was the whole testing grounds for getting it started. And yeah, Elmer Millenbeck called it the end of 90-mile-an-hour rig on a kiddie car.
Wow. What's the fastest you've ever been on an ice boat? You said 94?
On the DN in Finland, yeah. They clocked me out there. That was 146 kilometers an hour, 93, 94 miles an hour, something like that.
Are you wearing helmets at this point? I mean, do you have protective equipment?
Yeah, you have to wear helmets when you're racing, and you're wearing I wear a Henderson Tri-Lam. It's a warm weather dive suit that has neoprene on the outside and fleece on the inside and a wind barrier in between. So it's pretty aerodynamic, and you can run in it. You wear track shoes, and then after the race, you put a long coat on and some neo boots that go over your track shoes and stay warm. So
it's hard to explain. Ski racing, it's suits to cut the wind, because you're talking about winds in tenths of seconds. I'm sure it's the same in ice boating. If you've got competitive folks, and tenths of seconds is based on what you're wearing sometimes. If aerodynamics and all the other stuff that goes into going faster, that's
you're kind of stuck there.
Okay, you stuck again? There we go. I'll start that question again. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I was just saying that you'd mentioned that you guys wear very specific speed suits, and in every sport that's clocked in tenths of seconds, hundreds of seconds now, which is what I'm sure ice boating is no different than that.
Ice boating's a little different because you're not going through a time run. You're racing against a fleet of boats, and whoever gets across the finish line wins. So, but being aerodynamic is great. If it's warm out when we're racing, I have a luge suit, actually a racing luge suit that is ridiculously aerodynamic and very easy to run in. But you get pretty cold in it. So if it's warm out, and I'm talking warm like freezing and above, I'll wear the luge suit. But if it's down in the 20s or teens, I've got the Tri-Lam on to stay comfortable.
What's the perfect ice for you as a competitor? You walk out. What would you love to see if you had the perfect day?
Oh, probably like 12 to 15 knots of breeze and 6 inches of black ice. And you get black ice when the lake freezes, when there's no wind. And the lake will freeze like a mirror. I mean, you can see yourself in it. It's right. Just what they call black ice, and it almost looks like it's not frozen, because it's typically what ends up happening is you get early ice, and then it breaks up and refreezes, and then the ice is in different colors and all that kind of stuff. But if you get the whole thing to go off at once with no wind, you can really get a mirror. And it's nice to get that and get a really solid base of black ice, because then even if it does snow on it, the snow will eventually go away and refreeze, and you'll still have a good surface to go out and race on.
How often do you have perfect conditions?
And then I don't know. We had great ice on Pontiac Lake this year. Oh my gosh, we went out there and it was fantastic, and we had so much fun out there. Then when we went back out to Whitmore later on, it had frozen, and then snowed on it, and then the snow all melted and it refroze, and the surface had a texture to it, but it was still flat and fun and fast. So,
what's bad ice? What is it that that you sort of want to cringe away from?
Well, if there's holes, that kind of stuff.
In terms of ice, the actual ice. What's bad ice?
Just if it's broken up, ice floats on top of your cocktail drinks, right? So if it refreezes that way, it'll be all bumpy and rough, and you'll just bust up your boat if you try to sail on it.
Okay. Now, the very first boats had 2 runners in the front and 1 runner in the back. So here's my question. This is just a novice not knowing. Why are there 2 runners in the back and 1 in the front? And why aren't there 4 runners? Like look like a catamaran.
Well, I mean, basically the very first ice boats, they basically took their delivery boats on the canals in Holland, and they put a board across the front, and they used the same rudder, only with a skate in the back, to actually sail their commerce stuff to their customers. And that's how it kind of got started. So that's the way the first boats were stern steers. And I think that what they were trying to do was make the boats more and more efficient. So by putting the plank in the back, the skipper's weight is over the plank. So when the boat tries to tip, you've got riding moment or emphasis to try to flatten out the boat and keep the boat going really fast. And the two skates support the skipper's weight, and the front end is a little bit lighter, so and has a load of the mast and all that.
So the long time design of what it is now is what's pretty much that's the most optimal design that you could probably come up with, right?
I think that I think it can still evolve. I think it could, you could go further. They're racing those e-skeeters with a skipper in the front of the mast, and so it's pretty interesting. And you asked about four. I mean, one of the biggest, most important things to do is to have your side back runners be perfectly parallel through a wide range of conditions and winds. And so if you had four runners, that would make that even more of a problem to keep all four runners parallel, so that they're so having three, the front one just steers, and as long as it is going somewhat straight, then you're going pretty fast.
Are the runners on an ice boat similar to the runners on a bobsled?
Actually, yeah. I mean, there was a guy from New Jersey who talked to the bobsled guys, and they're using 440C stainless as their blades, and we adapted that to the DN runners. Now the bobsled runners, they're basically round, which have basically no nicks, and the DN runners have an edge on them because they're side loads, obviously, with the sail on it. And so you got to have an edge that keeps the boat from drifting sideways. So most of the runners have a 90-degree edge on the bottom of them. And then we control the crown, the length of the runner, depending on the conditions. And if there's snow, you have different crowns and different angles on the bottom.
So you could, in bobsledding, one of the rules, if you heat up the bottom of those runners to go faster, it's illegal. There's been all kinds of things over the years where bobsledders will try to put hand warmers on their sleds, on their runners before they go, and those kinds of things. So my question to you is there such a thing as cheating in ice boating, or is it? I don't know if cheating may be the wrong word, but how do you get an advantage over your competition?
There can be cheating in ice boating. As a matter of fact, there has been some of that. People have built sails that were too big. People have built components, runners and planks that don't have the required amount of wood inside them. There's specifications that you're supposed to follow, and people do anything to try to get an edge, especially if they're making money doing it by, getting a higher rank for their country and becoming part of the team or whatever. And that's, like with the bobsleds, that's why a lot of times right before the race, you'll see they have the sled upside down and they're working the runners, and
right.
That warms them as well as prepares them, for the ice. So, and depending on what condition the track is or what temperature, they might use a different coarseness of paper or Scotch-Brite or whatever to tune the runner.
I lived in Lake Placid for a while, and I was up there for the 80 Olympics, and that's why we lived up there, and I got a chance to know a lot of the bobsledders, because it turns out that bobsledding, probably like ice boating, if you're the best in the world, you still have a second job because there's no payment. There's no pay to be able to keep it. You're a teacher, you're a banker, those kinds of folks, because there's just no money in bobsledding. But it was amazing watching them with their runners, and I mean, they treated their runners like it was, I guess like a hockey player would treat a pair of ice skates, or a skier a pair of skis. So it's I just found that to be interesting that they would be so maniacal towards their equipment. It was
That's cool. A very good word, maniacal. Towards my runners, that's one thing I am. If you mess with my runners, you're going to see the bad side of Ron. It's so much work to get the runners absolutely perfect and ready to race. And I build a lot of runners every year. And when I deliver the runners, they are ready to race. No one else, when you buy runners from them, are they perfectly honed and stoned and ready to put on the boat. They won't be able, after they screw them up, they won't be able, they'll have to send them back to me unless they've been doing this a long time to get the edge back to where they got it from me. So it's very important. I mean, at least in your head, it's very important to have the runners perfect.
Now you've won.
But I mean, ice boating. The thing about ice boating is just there's so many things that is so great. But you go and you do a race, and then after the race is over, you put your parking brake on. You can walk right over to the guy who you just had a tussle with going around a mark rounding, or he tacked on you going upwind, or he was a little faster, and you can go right up to him and talk to him, say, hey man, what are you using? What were you trying there? And and you can exchange the different information. I mean, I got to race in Sweden this year. I got to race in Montana, Fort Peck, Montana. And the people you meet in this sport, I mean, to be willing to go out on the ice in the wintertime and go 90 miles an hour it takes a special, type of person. And the shenanigans that go on at nighttime are just, like you can imagine. It's just so much fun, the people.
I think the term passion comes back to mind as a part of our conversation. If you're in the if you're down, we go downhill in the wintertime, and we're hitting speeds not 95, but we're hitting 75 or 80 coming down a hill, especially if you're out west. That's not true in Michigan. The hills aren't big enough, but passion is probably a pretty good word, because you got to be a little crazy to do those things. Do you have to pay for your own expenses, or is there money involved with the class and the ability and the level that you're at?
There's no funding from the United States. No, I pay for all my own stuff myself, and I am doing it with trying to make money building ice boat parts. So it's what I'm passionate about. I'm kind of blessed to be able to build something that I really have a lot of passion and love for. But it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because I get pretty sensitive if something isn't right and the customer isn't happy. But
so is this an avocation hobby, or is this? I'm talking about the actual ice boating. Is it a hobby for you? I guess what I'm saying is that with your ability, if you were in almost any other sport, you'd be wined and dined, and you'd fly all over the world in a jet.
That'd be pretty nice. I have managed to get a lot of traveling in, because the the ice boaters all take care of each other. If people come into Detroit, I have 10 or 12 different packages of boats for the Europeans that I store and I maintain and I have ready to go for when those guys get here. And there's people in Europe who do the same thing. So from that standpoint, it makes it a little bit easier to travel and be ready to go, so we get people over there who help, and I help over here, and so we can just go out and enjoy what we love to do, and I make money building the parts. Right now I've got a new mandrel built, and I'm going to be making pre-preg masts for the DNs for this coming season. I've got 2 new hull designs, and I've got 7 hulls on order. I got boats to build. I actually power plane the shapes onto a couple of hull sideboards today, and I got to go out and cut the curve in them so I can put the curves in the back and put them on the table. I'm hoping to put the first hull of new design on the table today, and we're also working on a new plank mold that it's going to be a full-size aluminum plank mold, so we can make completely CNC formed cores and pre-preg pins, and just very, very state of the art. I mean, I've been building stuff for years that has been, pretty much anyone can do at home, but I'm kind of getting the heat put on me by the Europeans. It's been a little while since I won the world, so going to have to try to step up my game a little bit and make something more state of the art available for me and my customers. So
now ice boating in Europe is bigger than it is here. Is that fair?
That's fair. I mean, for the worlds and Europeans, they limit the number of boats to 200. So if you haven't registered by the time they have 200 boats signed up, you can go on a waiting list.
Wow.
I mean, it's absolutely amazing. We'll get over 100 boats here, but I mean, they actually limit the number of boats, and they limit the number of boats that can participate per country. You actually have to be invited by the European Secretary of your particular nation. And each nation, based on the number of members they have, is only allowed so many sailors per country. I mean, it's amazing. It's just gigantic over there. And the trailers and the boats and everything they have over there, the amount of money that is spent is incredible. It's really fun. Really fun to go over there and compete.
I'm assuming that the Netherlands and Holland and those kinds of places where you've got skating is a normal thing outside, speed skating, those kinds of things. I think that would be a combination that would be perfect. long canals. Can you ice boat down those canals?
That's pretty dangerous, right? Because depending on wind direction and stuff, you got to be able to turn around. They don't turn real quick when you're going that fast. So it's you need more. Like for a race course, you want to have a mile in any direction. You know what I mean? If you get a round mile is fine. If you can get a mile in any direction, then if the wind shifts, it makes it pretty easy to just reset the course and get it going and have a really nice pan of ice with no ridges and all that kind of stuff. So.
How many folks in America? How many ice boaters in America? How big is your national federation?
For the DN class, we've got about in the DN class, we probably have about 800 members, and that's gone down over the years, just because prices have gone up, and so some of it is some of the participation has been reduced, but there's still a whole lot of boats. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of boats that people just put out in their backyard and go sailing. And we're just talking about the DN class itself. There's all the other classes have boats, and there's different cruising boats, and there's 10 times as many people who just have a nice boat and put it out on their backyard when the ice is right and go have a good time, than actually chase and go all around to race worlds and North Americans and all that kind of stuff.
Talk a little bit about your world championships.
Well, my first world championships was the first one I won was in Finland in 1998, and I had been second 5 times before I won. I figured I just was never going to win it.
Wow!
And I built a boat for Rudy Bauer, who was he was an Austrian, and he loved the boat. He came over here and sailed it in North America, and he said, "Ron," he says, "I'm going to take my boat back home with me," and he says, "You can race my boat at the World Championships. I'll sail my other one. You can sail this one." So I went over there and I used his hull, plank, mast, and boom, and I brought my own sails and runners, and I won every race. I mean, that I was just had something that nobody else had. It was just so fast. There's 5 kilometers between the marks where we raced in Finland, and what an adventure getting there. Oh my God, it was 36 hours from where I landed in Amsterdam before I got to Finland, where we actually raced to travel ferries, and oh my gosh, such a crazy, wonderful trip. But I didn't have to race the last race, and I wrote the whole thing. I have a website, iceboatracing.com, and in my archives it has my stories from the worlds that I've won, so you can people can go there and check that stuff out. And there's great videos, and there's videos from when I raced on Lake Baikal and when I raced the worlds in Sweden, and it has commentary written on it, so text written on it, so you can actually see what I'm thinking about during a race, or just see the beauty of the area where we're sailing. Oh my gosh, just wonderful stuff.
How much time do you spend marketing this sport to maybe folks that don't understand it?
Not very little. I mean, I just with the website, it's helped a lot. But basically, a lot of my customers come from the international class and people who look into the International DN Ice Yacht Racing Association, IDNIYRA.
Right.
They'll find me if they're looking for stuff, and I put ads in the newsletters and that kind of stuff, yearbooks.
I'm curious, are the sales? We've had a lot of conversations with sail makers on the show. We're talking about the cost of sales and things of that nature. My question is, does winter air much different than summer air, and are the materials different in actual sails themselves?
Well, in the DN class, they use 6.5 ounce Dacron, which is available, and it's very durable, and the sails will last a very long time if you take good care of them. And there's been a couple of pushes to change the Mylar, but I mean, in the wintertime, the Mylar is even worse because it has a tendency to crack and all that kind of stuff. So the durability factor would go way down if we use Mylar and all that kind of stuff in the DN class. So,
so summer winter sails are similar.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Not like, so I'm at home and I decide all of a sudden I want to get an ice boating. How do I start?
Well, contact me and get a chance to come out and see where we're racing. Go to you can Google Iceboat stuff and find out people who are in your area. And if you actually wanted to get into iceboat racing, what I think the best thing to do is to contact people around you, and then go on the website, find yourself a good used boat. You can get a good used racing complete DN for about $2,500. You can get a POS for about $600. That you could put out in your backyard and go sailing on. But if you actually want to race, you can get a reasonably competitive boat for about $2,500. And then every year, just add a component to it and upgrade the boat until you get rated. But at $2,500, you can be competitive in your local club racing and that kind of stuff. So you can go out and have a good time.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that inexpensive. I mean,
it really is. To be competitive, you can spend $3,500 and be very competitive in the world. So.
Yeah. And I'm sure, like every other sport, you can spend 5 figures and get a complete Kevlar build that's a rocket ship.
Yeah, well, for a complete boat for me, with 3 sets of runners, 2 sails, covers, it's about $15,000. Race ready, absolutely ready to, everything I know how to put in a boat to go out and win the worlds. But you probably spend more than that for your skis.
Well, it's as crazy as it's going to sound. The new downhill skis that are coming out, believe this or not, retailing at $3,000.
Get out!
$3,000, and the PTEX at the bottom is PTEX 5 million. I'm exaggerating, but it's the technology has upped the price, and it's driving. We've lost half the ski world, the junior ski world. I'm saying anybody under 18 to the national team, and they all get their own skis. But if you're paying for your own stuff, when my son's skiing in high school and college, I work for Fisher, so we get our stuff for free. It's nothing to have 8 or 9 or 10 pairs of skis hanging up in the garage. Now you're talking, it's just the cost of every sport has gone through the roof, which is why the participation is dropping. It just is. It's just too expensive. I'm sorry, but a golf club, somebody bought me a driver the other day for my birthday, and it was like $400. I haven't spent $400 on golf clubs in every club I own my entire life.
Exactly.
It's just gotten to be a little bit much.
And I've kind of been fighting this with the DN class a lot, because here I am, a builder, but I believe one of the first rules it says is that the boat must be home buildable, and now they're making hulls that are S-glass pre-preg with end grain balsa autoclave cured. Who has one of those in their garage? Come on. And the boats I build are all made out of wood. I mean, the boats that I win the North Americans and Worlds with, they're 20 years old, and I'm still competitive and have a chance of winning the Worlds and North Americans every time I get in the boat. And, and you can see what they're built out of. The plank is wood with fiberglass on the outside. The hull is all Sitka spruce and mahogany, Okumi mahogany decks. Very easy to build. We have full-size plans for anybody who wants to build them and all that kind of stuff. And so, in the rules that are getting passed, I always try to be really careful that you keep the home builder in mind, because you want to be able to, most of the people in the United States, pretty much everyone builds part of their components at home. In Europe, most people buy everything. So it's a little different mentality in Europe than the U.S. And it's a balance, trying to get what everybody wants in the class, to keep the class growing. And some people have the idea, well, the young people want all carbon fiber. And I'm going, well, it's going to be so expensive. Nobody's going to want to do it. So it's like,
a question just came to mind. I think of Jamaica, I think of sprinters as being the best country in the world to provide the world with sprinters during the Olympic years. Who nationally, or in this case, who internationally, you're going to look to a country that produces great ice boaters. What country is that?
It's Poland. No question about it. Poland.
Poland? Really?
Karol Jablonski has won the world's, I think, 14 times. He's absolutely the best DN ice boat racer. It's Karol Jablonski. But those guys, you got to realize that they get funded by their country. They get completely funded. If they win the worlds, they get 25,000 euros a month for the next year. If they take second, they get 15. If they take third, they get 8,000 euros a month for the next year, plus all their expenses paid. And Carol's the same age as me, born in 1962. He went to a high school where they built ice boats. He lived at the school. They got up in the morning, they designed boats, and they had normal arithmetic, English, Polish, whatever classes, and then they went out and sailed the boats. And they came in and ate and did more studies. I mean, he went to a high school that was, and so did a couple of the other guys were in the same school from Poland. And I mean, they really push it hard. They are. Poland has for sure the greatest DN ice boat racers. That's for sure.
When is there an age when you're done racing? Is there an age limit? I guess is maybe a better question.
That's actually a really good question. You know, and with the DN class, what's fantastic is that no matter what your age, no matter what your sex, you know, male, female, whatever age you are, you're completely ready to compete. Now, if it gets to the point where you can't see and you're dangerous out there,
I get that.
They will tell you, you know, you can't race anymore, and that's in the rules that if you're dangerous, you will be not allowed out on the race course. But you know, with the new bendy mast and rigs, now older sailors are able. It doesn't take quite as much physical strength as it used to because the mast and planks absorb the wind so much that it doesn't take as much strength as it used to sail the boats.
I mean, think about how cool it would be. You're still in your 60s, 50s, late 50s, 60s, and you're competing, you know, internationally and you're globally, for that matter. You can't say that about a lot of sports.
Right. Well, I'm 58, so I'm pretty close.
Right. But I'm saying, in every other sport, you're a coach or an old man or retired. Right?
Right. And what's also really great is that the girls get to compete on the same level as the men. As a matter of fact, most of the female get offended when you give them a female trophy for the best female. That's not what they want. They want trophies for, you know, beating the men.
So it's truly, because there really is no if they were required, well, if they're playing another sport that required their own strength, obviously men are stronger than women just physiologically. But in this case, it's 1 for 1. It's not 1 for 1.5.
Right, and it really the key is to have your boat designed to fit your weight, you know, and your sailing style. You get a mast and a runner plank that flex correctly for the skipper's weight.
Okay,
and, that makes all the difference.
Okay, well, here's a question. I'm 240 pounds. I'm gonna have a different boat than a guy that weighs 160. Is that correct?
Correct.
So I'm gonna have the size to fit me.
Yep.
Okay.
And the plank, the way the plank, you know, the cross beam, the flex will be for your weight, and the mast will be a little bit stiffer and all that kind of stuff. You're gone from Germany, 300-pound German guy. He's one of the best DN sailors ever born. He used to fly 737s for Lufthansa. And he's 300 pounds, and he's been ranked as high as 3rd in the world. He should have won the Worlds, but I was with him. I travel with him all the time, and he has some of his equipment here, and I have my equipment stored with him. And
so the size doesn't matter, or it helps?
And he just always tunes himself out. He always thinks he needs something. Well, I mean, if it's super light air, you know, you're going to have a disadvantage over a girl who weighs 100 pounds, you know.
Right.
But when it starts, if it's blowing at all, and you get the right runners and the right deflection on the mast and the plank and all that, you can be competitive as anyone. And the one thing that's really nice is that if you are trying to compete at the top level of ice boating, you're working year round to be at the weight you want and be at the physical shape you want. And people who have had complete, diseases, cancer and stuff like that, they fought back from it so they could race ice boats one more time. I mean, because it's like I always say, it's the most fun you can have with your clothes on.
Now, I know you sailed. You've been very competitive. You've been decorated as a sailor, not only as an ice boater. And I think I asked the question earlier if it was ice boating or sailing, and sort of taken. I didn't mean to insult you. That wasn't my question. But talk a little bit about your sailing, because you do a lot of that in the summertime.
I'm sorry, I missed the end of that question there.
I just said talk a little bit about your sailing.
Oh, well, if I had a choice and I only was able to do one or the other, it'd be ice boating, no question about it. And anybody who ever has done ice boating would agree. I mean, it is just so much fun. And that comes from getting to race on 70-footers in the Caribbean and everything. And I've done 68 Mackinac races. I mean, I've had so much fun summer sailing and gotten to travel all over the world doing that.
I'm
I love it
curious.
all.
How do you race 68 Mackinaws when you're only 58?
Chicago and Port
Oh,
Huron.
okay, okay, all right, all right. That's I was thinking that. I'm thinking the math didn't work out there for a second.
Yeah, I'm what they call a double old boat. I've done 25 on both sides plus now. So
Just just from a timing standpoint, you surprised that the Chicago Mac was canceled?
uh no, my nephew Mike Ray and Leszek Solkowski live in Chicago, and they haven't even opened up the waterfront there yet. You can't even walk or run along the waterfront or ride your bike like everybody does there. It's not open. None of the marinas are open yet, so they can't put boats in the water, and they're just totally running out of time. So it seems like it's the right. And the Port Huron Mackinac still may be canceled. They have now limited the race to just being the shore course. They're not going to have a Cove Island course because you can't sail in Canada. You can't go into Canada, and a certain level above you can't go north of there in the lake, and they have a whole bunch of rules. And there's still a chance that they could cancel the Port Huron Mackinac race. I was planning on doing the Thistle Nationals in Cleveland this summer. That was my big push, and they canceled that till next year. So.
No, I heard a rumor this morning that we started junior sailing on Monday, and DYRA is having a conversation later today apparently about canceling 420s. Well, everybody's got 10, 12, 15 kids in their 420 class. We've got enough lasers to cover some of those kids, but then it's just the nature of the beast at the moment.
That's a real shame because I 20 class gets kids used to flying spinnakers, and when I was a junior sailor, we sailed flying juniors. I think there still may be a couple of them at Crescent, and my internet is unstable. I don't know if you're getting this or not, but I think it's very important for the kids to learn to fly spinnakers, and because when you get on a big boat, that's what you're going to have to do. I mean, usually a young kid getting on a big boat, the first job they give them is bow, because nobody, they want to have the young kids up there putting sails up and down.
Right.
It's hugely important for the kids to learn how to fly spinnakers.
Absolutely.
It's easier because I was fortunate when I went through junior sailing to have my cousin John Sherry, who's now professor at Michigan State University. He crewed for me every time, and he sailed me throughout our whole junior sailing, career. We sailed together, and kids finding another kid that can sail with, and for sure if they'd have to do social distancing and just finding someone from their household, two brothers who can sail together, good luck.
Well, we had 2 weeks ago, we had a siblings race, father, son, daughter, sister, sisters, brothers. We had I think we had 18 or 19 boats, and it was really fun. They had a chance on Sunday. I think we got 8 races in, but the problem becomes, out of the entire lake, we found enough to fill 18 boats, but that's it. So
I could have gone with my son if I'd known about it. I didn't think that I could do that.
We did, and it was pretty cool. That's why the Mackinac, you had to have everybody from the same household. Some households like yours would be a distinct advantage with the class of sailors that come out of the Sherry household. Holy crap. In my household, you got to sink the boat, but I get your point.
I did have 3 kids that went through the Crescent Junior program and loved it. It was fantastic. So.
Well, listen, I appreciate your passion for the sport, and I will make sure that the information up on ice boating is all here on our conversation. So this has been a really fun conversation, Ron. I really appreciate you taking the time. And maybe this winter we come out and take some film and watch a little bit. That'd be fun.
Watch? Are you kidding me? We're gonna throw you in a boat. I've got tons of them in the trailer. It's like crack. You'll be totally addicted the first time you try it. You'll be like, why haven't I been doing this?
Well, let me explain to you this way. I've skied my entire life.
There you go.
I ski 100 days a year. I've never been on moguls because I hate moguls. I don't worry about deep snow. I still put my GS boards on even up at Nub's Knob, and I'll go off to the side by myself and still want to go 70 miles an hour as fast as I can go, or as fast as my fat body will carry me down the hill. If my hair's not on fire in the wintertime, it's the same kind of thing you're at. I get the point. I have no interest in all the other stuff with skiing. I've never been on a snowboard in my entire life, and I grew up at ski resorts. I want to go fast, and I want to go as fast as I can. So I get that passion, believe me.
Nice to
Listen,
meet you, Greg. See you
thanks
at the
again.
club.
Appreciate it. Thanks very much.